I'd like to welcome you to this digital deep dive where we will discover the potential of live data in sports. This digital event is hosted by Football Business Insight, so many thanks for that, especially, of course, Thomas Maurer. I hope you can all see and hear me. If not, I'm pretty sure that someone will post it in the chat or I will get a private message that something is not working. But so far, I think everything is good. As I said, a warm welcome from not rainy, but a little bit gray Hamburg. So I'm sitting in Germany and I'm really looking forward to the next 90 minutes. So we will have about the length of a football match without a 15 minutes break in it. And for the next 1.5 hours, we will invite 3 different guests who will give a crisp and short presentation in the beginning. And we will close, so we will conclude basically the second half time with a very interesting panel discussion with all 3 of them, where I have the honor to ask them my questions, but of course your questions as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free during the presentations or afterwards to put it in the comments. I see some of you are already using the comments in order to test it and in order to give it a soft start. Please just write good morning and tell us where you are right now. Tell us in which city, in which country you are in, from where you are listening, from where you are watching. As I said, this is Ralf from Hamburg, and I'm very happy that you joined so far, and I'm looking forward to the next 90 minutes. Having said that, we will directly start with the first presentation, and for that, I have the honor to welcome Maximilian Schmidt. He will talk about the breakthrough of live tracking, recent milestones, and untapped opportunities. He's the co-founder and managing director of KINEXON Sports and Media, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation, Maximilian. Hi.
Good morning, Ralf. Thanks for the kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. Thanks to Football Business Insights for this great technological deep dive on live tracking. So I think it's an opportunity for us all to have a great conversation about where the industry is heading in terms of live tracking. I think a lot of people talk about it, hear about it. You might have experienced it yourself, or you're watching sports and see tracking data. So it's great that we have the opportunity to give a deep dive from different sports and different organizations. I will guide you through our perspective from KINEXON as we experience at the moment the breakthrough of live tracking. My name is Maximilian. I'm one of the co-founders of KINEXON Sports and Media. I'm a sports lover. I'm a tech enthusiast, and we strongly believe that tracking data is a great tool to tell comprehensive insights about the sports we love, for storytelling, but for everyone who's doing sports, for the teams, for the coaches. And we strongly believe that that information and those insights need to be available in real time, need to be available live. Because when we do sports ourselves and we go running and we exercise, we often have a smartwatch because we have a specific goal that we want to achieve. We want to run for 30 minutes with a certain intensity, or 60 minutes. And we only can check if we do that right in the way we wanted to do it, if we get instantaneous feedback in real time. The same applies for professional team sports. So having the information at hand on the pitch where it counts just is the basic requirement to make the right call, the right decisions to reach your goals. And the same applies for fans, because the way we apply and consume sports as we go to sports events is that we live it in the moment. We live it right now and not the day after. And that's why live tracking data can enable us actually to personalize the viewing experience, because we can have a dedicated look to those team members, those players and athletes that we care the most about. And it gives us a more interactive viewing experience, because it enables new ways of applications by watching sports, like gamification or betting, for example. The good news is the technology is ready there, and now we have to take the advantage of it. And let me guide you through our very personal journey of the last 8 years as KINEXON, from where we started, what was our vision, to where we are right now, what is the state of the industry, but also like talking about untapped opportunities that we still have to apply. Our breakthrough moment at KINEXON, our wake-up call, was when our co-founders, Oliver and Alexander, they visited a behind-the-scenes tour at the Allianz Arena in Munich, and they were shown how technology helps to make football a fascinating experience for fans. And they were shown how tracking works back now 10 years ago. And they were really impressed and fascinated about the opportunities, what was able to do back then, 10 years ago. However, they also were challenged because the information of collecting data back then was very complex. Infrastructure was heavy. A lot of manual work was done by operators to actually enable that kind of tracking and getting insights on sports performance. And most importantly, it was not available live. So that was really like the trigger that kind of built our initial vision that we want to change that. We want to enable a world where tracking becomes live, easier, slower infrastructure, and accessible to broader area, not only Champions League football, but a broad area of sports. And that's why we started building up KINEXON and building up a story of how technology can help to bring sports to the next level. And again, that is easier said than done. And it took us 3 years actually to come up with our first product. And it took us another 7, 8 years to become where we are right now. So we started 10 years ago almost with the idea, and we launched our first product in 2015 with an innovation partner here close by to Munich, the FC Augsburg, to really bring sports to the next level by technology. And now we are a company of 250 employees, more than 200 active sports customers. Still a long way to go, but it was already a very exciting journey. Let me tell you the launch of our first live player tracking data. So the most essential thing was like, how can we provide to sports teams a tool that provides them insights on performance in real time on the pitch? And our first solution with our innovation partner, FC Augsburg, was launched in 2015, where we equipped the team with our brand new LPS solution. The great thing, we had 100% data live in real time. Everything was accessible for the coaches on the pitch. And that was the beginning of our journey. And we added a couple of Bundesliga clubs to our customer base back then. But the initial startup was also a bit slow because it took time to educate the practitioners how to make the best out of real-time data. And the infrastructure was still kind of complexer than it is today. And so the scalability was rather okay. And we decided, okay, how can we speed up things? So we looked for markets, and that was a really pivotal experience for KINEXON themselves, that we decided in 2016 to say, okay, we should have a look into the United States, because we gained a lot of interest from the NBA and basketball to have live data. And we said, okay, we started in Munich. It's a great opportunity here with Bundesliga clubs. We see that the application is rather slow. There is a market that is tremendously interested in what we are doing. And they have a high demand in the NBA because they have a cruel schedule of 82 regular season games, tons of injuries, and a high demand for live data in practice in games to make the right calls, how you want to intensify the individual load of the players. And a pioneer in the US sports, Dr. David Martin, back then, he was responsible for technology and athlete performance at the Philadelphia 76ers. He kind of identified the potential of our technology back then and said, okay, this is what the NBA, in his case, the Philadelphia 76ers needed. This is what we need. We need that kind of technology to equip our courts with that tech, to have real-time insights, to help our players to stay healthy. And that was the beginning of our breakthrough in the US sports. And after that, in only 3 years, 75% of US teams in the NBA applied for KINEXON to use it. Today, over 80% of the NBA organizations use KINEXON on a daily basis, which kind of is the story of a sport that applied for real-time tracking data rather quickly. And we are really happy to join that path that the teams are going through and their education journey, how to utilize to get the best out of the team. And taking it from the professional teams in the NBA, we now equip also over 100 NCAA colleges that utilize our technology to help them to have performance insights in real time. The one thing that we always thought was missing back then was how can we track the ball? So it was always kind of easier to track players because you had a small wearable device the players are wearing. And we found a great way to actually manage load of players to help them to kind of take the number of minutes that might be responsible for them to go healthy through the season. We help them to have like a objective, quantifiable return to play protocol. We help them to develop their performance, but one aspect was always missing. If you don't have the ball, you're kind of missing half of the piece, because only with ball you can get the context of the game. You understand the context of football, basketball, or handball. Only then we can really make sport-specific analysis. So we partnered with Derbystar Select, a Danish-German company that provides the German Bundesliga with the official match ball, and decided, okay, we have to bring our technology into the ball, because only then we have the full picture for the teams and also later on for the fans, as we will see. And Select Derbystar was able, with our technology, to kind of create a manufacturer ball that is undetectable in terms of look and feel for a player compared to a ball without any technology. And having a connected ball was enabling us to not only measure the performance of the players, but actually measuring the performance of the team from a sports perspective. So if we talk about football, you could now analyze every position and movement of the ball on the pitch, and therefore can tell how the team is performing in build-up situations with the ball, how fast they're playing the game or a specific play. Against the ball, you can evaluate the compactness of defense and the pressure they are applying. And in transition, you know how fast your team is reacting to transition. And now you can analyze the tactical and technical behavior of your team. Marcel Daumer, an assistant coach for Bayern for Leverkusen, was a pioneer here and applied the technology in Leverkusen 3 years ago. Now we also have Wolfsburg Leipzig that joined that development and use the ball tracking technology in practice to really understand better what's going on in the pitch. One of the biggest things for us in 2019 was when we and our partners from the Handball Bundesliga and the team around Frank Bohmann decided, yes, the Handball League is ready. They want to go the next level and bring live play and ball tracking to the LIQUI-MOLY Handball Bundesliga. That was an enormous milestone for us. So not only individual teams actually applied for that kind of technology, but a whole league decided, yes, we want to go that to bring our sports to the next century, to bring our sports to the next level and really enable new ways of applications for our great sports of handball. I will not go into detail because I'm pretty sure Frank can tell that way more better than I can. And I'm really excited to hear him talking about their experience with tracking data for the last couple of years. We are now in our third season. I'm really proud that we kicked off that partnership. When we go into the present, where we are right now, we see recent trends that not only the availability of a singular technology like KINEXON's technology enables our partners to really do great things with data to help them to improve the level of their game, or also to use the data for new fan experience storytelling. The one thing that really is tremendous over the last couple of years is that we see an enormous speed in the development of cloud computing, but also the data transmission for the emergence of 5G. So that enables us to develop our product portfolio from a formerly stationary, very local system that can really be applied in an arena, in a closed pitch, now to bring real-time data also to mobile solutions. So last year we were able to launch a mobile tracking solution with the latest GNSS technology combined with 5G capability to bring tracking to sports wherever it is, not only in the home pitch, but if you're away, if you practice in a training camp, no matter where you split up groups and have decentralized teams, one is just running the forest, the others are on the pitch, the other one is in Portugal, you can track wherever you are and combine that in a cloud and actually have access to the data wherever you are in the world. And combining that part of it, bringing real-time data to broader audience and combining different sources of tracking data, because our customers have our technology, but also technology from different vendors. And we want to bring that together in a connected solution to have a real comprehensive data set to get the best out of technology. So we are in a great position. However, I still believe, or we believe, that there are a lot of untapped opportunities out there. And let me give you 3 examples where we see a lot of opportunities that we still haven't really solved. First thing is fan engagement. So Frank will tell you a great story how data can help handball fans of the German Bundesliga and the teams to experience handball in a new way. However, I still believe that we are just at the beginning, and that is only the tip of the iceberg, because most of the application of live tracking data nowadays is brought very linear. There's a protocol when to bring in the data that tells a new way, a new story. In the future, I'm very optimistic that we will make it more interactive, more personal. By having real-time insights, you, for example, can sit in front of a screen watching your favorite team play football, and your team has a free kick, and Leroy Sané is actually approaching the free kick. You can predict and say, what kind of ball will he play? What kind of shooting technique will he apply? Where will he shoot on target? And use that and interact with your buddies. You might have a community where you have a game going and you compete in that kind of community. Further, you're really interested not only in football itself or handball itself, you have a favorite player. For example, I'm really interested in whatever Thomas Müller is doing. And I want to have dedicated insight about his particular performance on that day. So I want to have a personalized viewing experience, and we will bring viewing experiences more personalized, enabled through live tracking, because then we can kind of generate content that is dedicated to whatever you wish for. One application area, for example, are our very personal moments, because I love, for example, you see a picture here of Mario Götze's goal in 2014 against Argentina in the World Cup final. You want to have that moment also enhanced with data. And you can kind of take that moment out and keep it as a memory, trade it. We see the emergence of NFTs coming, and we are convinced that they're going to stay. And live tracking data will make this kind of experience even more unique and bring it to the next level. The second field of untapped opportunities, tactical data analysis. We have a partner in Switzerland that has a great word. He said always, we need more data translators, because the one thing that we see is that the data and the insight that we are getting is still a very technical term. And we have only a few experts in a club or a league or as an informed fan who can really understand the data. And having the context of the game really helps us to bring that also to the players and to the coaches. So we need to design software applications that are more organic, dynamic, and really just answer the questions that the user has. In that example, the coach. If the coach is interested in a very specific question, how his winger is performing in that game, based on the metrics that the coach thinks is relevant, software should give answers to that specific question. And therefore, you need live tracking data of player and ball, you need available at hand, and we really need to improve the way how we contextualize the analysis and help to give quick answers to the questions that are the most pressing for those who have it. And last but not least, data democratization. We just have now Wolfsburg and Leipzig joining with their women's team to our users of our technology. We have Stanford basketball, women's basketball, the current champion of NCAA basketball, playing with KINEXON. But still, if you look at our portfolio, less than 10% of our customers are women's sports or youth sports. And we will see way more women's sports and youth sports and prosumers also aiming to apply the same quality of technology to make their game better. So we see it as our responsibility to continue to work on technology that can be used in a broad user sample, that we can democratize sports technology. Our new 5G empowered GNSS is a first step towards that, but we're not there really to equip the thousands of teams out there in the world. We're on our way, but a long way to go still. we're really happy to be FIFA preferred provider for live player tracking, which is a great honor for KINEXON to be recognized among the best in the field, but it's also a great responsibility for us to continue our way as a pioneer, as a thought leader, to really develop sports to the next level, empowered by technology, because we think technology is already out there. We now have to take the advantage of it. And I think it's a great year, 2022, to go that road, and looking forward to the discussion with my colleagues, Nicolas and Frank and Ralf. I'm happy to also get your questions out within the next couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maximilian. Of course, we should all now imagine that you have a standing ovations after your presentation, but virtually that's quite difficult. I have one question for you, because all other questions we might postpone to the panel discussion. Before I ask that question, I again would like to invite you, and by you I mean the audience, to ask your questions in the chat. Just type in what you want to know from Maximilian, and we will discuss that later in our panel discussion. Maximilian, you said that the journey of KINEXON Sports and Media started with FC Augsburg, close to Munich, in 2015. I think it's quite easy to convince a club if many organizations are doing something. But how did you convince the first club, FC Augsburg, to cooperate with you?
It's through communication. So basically, we had an introduction to Stefan Reuter, who believed that as a small team with a rather small budget compared to the competition in the Bundesliga, they need to differentiate by other stuff. And they were convinced that technology can help them to really use it as a tool, as an education tool, to apply their philosophy of football and help it to the coaching staff and the players to apply that. And we had a good conversation. He was convinced early on, and he also could convince Markus Weinziel back then to go the same road. So I think it's about, you need to identify those thought leaders, those pioneers, the early adopters, and then use them to educate the broader market. And if we look back 2014, 15, I think a third of the Bundesliga applied some kind of tracking technology on their daily base. Now I think we have almost 90% already using. So it always takes time, and you need to identify those early thought leaders. And Stefan Reuter is definitely one of them.
Yeah, perfect. But this shows, from my opinion, that the thought leaders, as you called them, are very important for those organizations. So which means if the senior management or the top management is not that looking forward to the future, it might be difficult to establish solutions like that. We have one question from the audience, which might be quite good and suitable for you, from Kilian. Thank you very much, Kilian, for the question. The question is, which will be the sports besides soccer where there will be the highest demand for tracking technology in your view, Maximilian? Of course, you have to say handball, but besides that.
Well, that's a tricky one, because I personally believe that almost every professional sport can kind of benefit enormously for tracking data. We specialized in team sports, so we see that it's rather more like how professionally is the sports managed itself, how much money is in the sport. So we see obviously in the US with baseball and American football, they are very advanced, but also like handball, basketball, and hockey or volleyball have a high demand to do that. Every sport is kind of unique in the way how complex it is. Like many sports are very static and they have a repetition of same events. Like baseball, it's rather easy for technology to apply that. And a sport like football is very complex because it's very confusing in terms of you cannot really predict what's happening in 10 minutes. But I wouldn't really differentiate that one sport needs it more. I think every sport kind of has the need of that. And we might not be the technology and the solution for all sports, but if it comes to team sports, I think we see the trend in any sport that we are following at the moment.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Maximilian. And thank you, as I said, for the question, Kilian. I'm pretty sure there are some more questions, which we will discuss later in the panel discussion. But Maximilian, you offered the perfect opportunity to introduce our next guest, because on your final slide, you said, I think technology is ready. We just have to take advantage of it. And now we will talk about the future of football from a technological perspective. So there we have the link with technology. Thank you very much. So this shows that we have a storyline in this digital deep dive, focusing on the potential of live data. And by saying that, I already see my next guest next to me. I warmly welcome Nicolas Evans. He's head of football research and standards at FIFA. And with FIFA, I think we all know that we are now talking about football specifically. I'm really looking forward to your insights in the future of football from a technological perspective. The stage is yours, Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Ralf. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining. It's a pleasure to be able to do these. As you can see, also together with our preferred provider, KINEXON, who I think has provided a good insight into the conversation. And although the general idea here is a deep dive, I want to take you through a slightly higher picture over the next 15 minutes, and really looking at this idea of how technology in football will work, and specifically then focus a bit more on the live data and the potential that we can see for the game, for the fan, for the different types of applications. So if we run through briefly, you'll see I have a number of different topics that I won't be able to go into. So I'd rather give you a really brief overview of all the different areas, just so that you also understand the complexity that we're dealing with, and therefore happy to then pick up things in the comments in the conversation later. But I'd like to share some food for thought. So I've called it here a structured framework to navigate innovation. I thought about that for a while, but for us, it's the difficulty, and the reason I put that in here. So as FIFA, we're not close to a team. So we've heard now, and we will hear again in handball, you have a league, you're a stakeholder that is, let's say, a maximum of one away from the player. So we're potentially two removed from the player, in that we don't have our own teams. We don't particularly have an interest in who wins a tournament. It should just be the best team, and we try and provide this framework. And that's what I want to walk you through a bit over the next minutes, and also try and maybe answer some questions when people saying, where are we going with this, and what are we going to do with it? So without going through the first question we always need to ask is why do we want technology? A lot of you will be, some people or you'll surely know someone saying it's ruining the game, it's breaking, it's not great. And that's why we want to dig in and say, look, what are we trying to achieve with this? Why is technology something that's desirable, or what are the potentials that we can have in football? So as promised, there's a bit of a menu here, a lot of things that we can go through. But for me, the most important part, and that's where my role as head of research comes in, is we actually want to solve problems. We don't want technology for the sake of it, because it's shiny and glossy and because we can, but we want to solve problems, or we want to help our stakeholders and teams. So in our FIFA vision, that's then also called, improve the game or game experience. Now that's very broad, but that precisely goes to the point of saying it should be good for the players, could be good for the fans, the media, or anyone involved in the game. You can already see a couple of pictures. Things like video refereeing is part of this technology that goes in there, where we consider it can help both the game and that game experience. It needs to future-proof. For me, a nice one where I come from, it shouldn't answer questions no one is asking. So that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that we have at the moment, that there's still a bit of a market push of people trying to sell technology or insights that at the moment no one needs or no one wants. And importantly, I think technology is never the solution on its own. The way I like to think of it, and then specifically if we look at data, coming slightly from a different angle here, you can see the typical sort of optical tracking setups. I like to think that technology and data adds intelligence. So if you think that on a base level, we already have basic intelligence, so that's what every one of us has, or the player intelligence, or all of these game intelligence, and you have cognitive intelligence. You have the very smart cookies, what's just referred to as a translator, so also someone who can read into it. But I think that with technology, we add two sort of levels, which I just want to dive into a bit more, what I'm calling business intelligence and artificial intelligence. So for me, business intelligence, of course, you get that without technology. Don't misunderstand me here. but I think it can help improve and structure a lot of things, be that around training. We saw things like load management. I understand more, I get more data on my players, pre-match decisions, lineups, in-game performance decisions, we'll get onto that, medical support, I mentioned officiating, scouting, fan preferences, all of this. So that's where having this data, having the technology just helps us structure these decisions in a better way, and it gives you more, quicker information, and where we are now, real-time reaction potential. And I think that that's something that's critical, that we can look into, and where really having the technology gives us an extra edge, or can give us an extra edge. The second sphere, and I think this is what's new, this is what technology brings in, where, you know, at least a business insight is something with sufficient resources and researchers, you can scout every player on the planet. But to go further and say, okay, let's find some artificial intelligence, that's something that you need the technology for. Specifically, speeding up processes, automating tasks, what I like, really removing human error. So I think it's also, you know, humans aren't perfect, they don't need to be, but some things come in, you know, technology can help prevent mistakes from happening. And I think it has a lot of potential to solve issues, provided we know what that issue is. And again, the tailoring to individual comes in, and all of this is great, but it really shows you the last point, it needs to be taught. So we need to understand what that problem is, and I'll come back to the topic that was just mentioned around the translator. So artificial intelligence is a massive opportunity, is a massive tool that we can use, but you need to know how to use it. So again, it doesn't on its own solve the problem. And that's really one of the biggest issues that we're seeing at the moment in football, is that really without that context. So we need to know, it's great if you tell me a player's running very fast, but if he's nowhere near the ball or nowhere near the goal, then that doesn't actually help us anything. So if we don't have context and translatability, we don't know what that problem, what problem we're trying to solve, and that won't give us any insights. And that's where really we see the need, and really just emphasizing that point quite strongly, is that it's an interaction. So technology always needs to be led and supported by humans, and vice versa. And I think more importantly, it's really for the human nature, so really the coaches, as was mentioned in the previous presentation, to tell the technology provider what they want from it. And that's one of the issues that we're still seeing today in football and other sports, is that you get the technology and then you wonder about what do I use it for? So if I can take the opportunity to go a bit more into the live data at this stage. So for me, live data, you have, well, I've put 5 categories here, but happy to discuss that. Video, which we're all aware with. Audio, which I think is still something that's completely underutilized. If you imagine how many microphones and opportunities are out there, food for thought. Wearable data, or wearables data, as was just mentioned, I believe we have very good GPS systems, we have very good local positioning systems, and that's getting more and more with internal and external load. Generally speaking, IoT, Maximilian mentioned the ball, but there's no reason why we can't track other things, the cameras, why we can't track all sorts of other devices that will help give us information. And I've added them more for the sake of saying we're not finished here. So I'll give you a different slide later, but at the moment I'm working on the assumption that we have about 4 million, at least an average 4 million data points per match. So that's a gross underestimation for a lot of them, but I'll explain that further. So this is really to understand what it is that we have in front of us during a game of 90 minutes. So if we look at the teams, and that's really some of the feedback that we had, we did a survey with all of the technical directors of the FIFA member associations, got a really high response rate. And we can see that there is belief in the need for technology, to the point that budgets need to be allocated. And I think specifically there is an understanding that if you don't have some form of data in the future, it is going to become a competitive disadvantage. So you can really impact team performance, be that in game or in training, to prevent someone from overtraining, And I think we can really see from the testing that we've done here at FIFA. So anyone who's not familiar with the process, we do testing of all the tracking systems, optical, wearables, any other types that are coming up, and really look at the validity and accuracy of this. And we're really seeing that these technologies are hugely improving, so that the data that's coming out of there is valid and is running through. I think the biggest risk that I've seen and we see in football is what I'll call the white elephant. So that too many teams are jumping onto really expensive technology without necessarily understanding what they need it for, rather than asking the question of saying, right, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. But what do I need for that? Instead, going down the route of saying, I'll buy this technology and then I'll figure out what it's for. I think that's the biggest risk we're seeing. But to my point, I do believe that it won't be too long before you can say it's not the technology that will win the trophies, but it's going to be very hard to win trophies without technology and data. I think that's something that you can fairly assume over the coming years. I think something that's often underestimated is the power of all of this data as well for official use. So as FIFA, as a governing body, we obviously do refereeing for the World Cup and a lot of other tournaments. All of this data that comes in, be that the video, be that even the audio, you can hear the referees talking to each other, helps refereeing in real time. And here, of course, live is of the essence. So if we can look at the things, and you've seen that, like limb tracking, like skeletal tracking, and any sort of player tracking, that can help inform refereeing decision. It can help inform refereeing training. Are they in the right position? Are they looking at the right place? And of course, artificial intelligence, as you've probably seen, can help us with offside decisions and things like that. We can quantify performances. Again, coming back to the referee, something that's not done very much today. You could look at things like man of the match. Yesterday, we had the FIFA Best Awards. And while, of course, there is a fan element to it, and I'm not trying to take that away, you could very easily also calculate sort of the value of these roles. We're seeing much better official stats and match data, which is something really important for us, that we can also share that with our medias. And then, of course, won't go into details around how we're getting more and more better connected stadiums, connecting to fan apps, connecting to anything you want. So for me, the bottom line that we can see here is that we understand as an owner of the data that the value of this data is increasing. And I think, as was nicely segued before as well, the interconnection of these different devices, of the wearables, of the audio, of the video, is something that will allow us much further insight. Last, concurring with what's been said, and again, I'll probably leave that to the handball example, who can give you a lot more insights. The key, I'd say, for fan and media is that we're getting the same access, or we can potentially get the same access to data as teams. Of course, a lot of that subject to agreement. Of course, the athlete has to consent if the data is being collected from a wearable device. But all of this is something that's solvable through framework agreements. But ultimately, it will allow a user to commercialize and to use individual content. And I've just put some examples here. It was mentioned earlier, overlay, second screen. One of the biggest issues that I can see here is we don't actually really know what we want. So I think the moment that we can decide, the moment that we can, in football, that the teams, that fans, that everyone says, hey, this would be really nice to have, and I'm actually willing to pay for it, then we'll start getting there. At the moment, we have this, this looks quite cool, but okay, no one's really willing to pay for it, which comes back to my very first question of why? Why are we doing this if there hasn't yet been that use case? So I think there's an evolving education going on here. Links to the likes of the e-game, to FIFA, EA Sports game is something that are very likely that you can take the free kick that was mentioned earlier by Leroy Sané and take it yourself already on your Xbox or on your PS. All of these things are possible, and that's where data will help. I just think we need a very, very deep dive to get there. So just very quickly to give you an idea when we're talking about live data from our FIFA tournaments. So I've put this together to give you an idea that for broadcast images, if we're talking a small or medium setup, we have between 12 6 and 12 million images working off 50 frame cameras. We look at tracking today, opticals around 3, GPS, if we're looking at 10 hertz is around 1 million. And now we're getting into the game changer, which is skeletal tracking, which will give you over 100 million data points. So you get around 20 points per player, 50 times a second. Then I'll add the officiating, goal line cameras, goal line technology, which is at 300 hertz, official eventing, and I haven't even gone into these new sources. Audio is recorded at 50,000 hertz or around that. So the amount of data that we could collect from a match is just absolutely exploding. If you take this skeletal data, we're talking almost 120 million or 130 million data points for one single match. Now that's a heck of a lot of data, and specifically then you need to know very clearly what your question is and what you're trying to answer so that you can actually get the insights. Otherwise, you're just literally looking for a needle in a haystack. If you look at your the magic ball and just say, tell me what I need to know. So this really, as promised, warned, the very, very quick overview. And I get this question so much. So what's the next big thing coming in football? When are we going to see, I don't know, robot players? When are we going to see some of the other things that we've gone out there? And the answer is relatively simple. It's more, we only want to bring technology into football. And I do sympathize with the more romantics when we can solve a problem. And that can be something as simple as lowering cost. So if we find a technology that does what it needs to do today at a lower cost, increase the quality. That's again where live data and where these different devices come in and help improve the game. And that's really why, we need to understand what is the question, what are we asking? And that's why we launched things like the initiative with our preferred providers in different areas. And this one here with live player tracking is to make sure that we get the best possible data that can help us, the teams, the referees, everyone solve some of the questions. So I know it's not a satisfying answer to those of you who wanted to hear that we're bringing in flying drones to do some form of fan engagement, because that's not necessarily what we're there. But if that's the technology that will help us solve one way or another, then that's the question that we're going to answer. So that was just, as I said, a general overview. I concur that there's a lot more to come. As you see, there's an explosion of data there, and now it's really about better understanding it and then being able to jump to the next level with it.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And as well, for you, just imagine standing ovations. You're standing in a big stadium, 50,000 people applauding to you. That's amount of that's, I assume, the amount of people listening to your presentation, I assume. Very interesting. I have one follow-up question and propose that we postpone the remaining questions from the audience to the panel discussion later. You mentioned the white elephant, a metaphor which I really enjoyed. Do you have any concrete or precise examples for technologies that are adopted without thinking about them deeply enough for us?
Yeah, I think you can look at a number of clubs at the moment. The technology is a belief system, right? At the moment, as was mentioned earlier. So specific coaches believe in specific technology types or even vendors. So I know, without mentioning the club's names, of enough clubs where there's the X technology room where we had coach A and he liked system A. And so when he left, now you have 50,000 euros of equipment standing in the room. Coach B came along and wanted technology B, and now that's in there. So you can go and look at certain garages or storage rooms where you end up with about 500,000 euros of equipment just because it came to it. So again, that's more this idea that the coach wants to bring his own idea and his own technology, rather than going from a club perspective of saying, what is it we're trying to achieve and what's the right technology to achieve that. And so, it's also for the leagues that run, and ourselves, we run tenders for every 3 to 5 years, typically, to have an official, let's say, optical tracking provider. But you'd be surprised if you go into some stadiums not too far from where you live, probably, and you look at the remains of the last 3 or 4 generations of tracking systems that are still hanging in there, because also no one removes them. They've basically been purchased. It's quite astonishing if you see the amount of hardware that's just still hanging around in stadiums, sometimes even being used without contracts in place. So that's more where I'm coming from, is that often it's an all-in-one solution that's being sold with the hardware, where rather than coming back and saying, right, I need this insight and I have this already, how could we potentially get to it? So sadly, I still think that it's there's a lot of equipment that's being wasted and just lying around unused. That's what I refer to at this point as white elephants.
And if I understood it correctly, this means changes for the actual athletes from time to time as well, right? Because they have to work with different hardware. Of course, maybe it's just something which they have around their chest or something like that, but nevertheless, it's a change for them. And it sounds like a kind of marketplace for refurbished technology of professional football clubs could be a business idea. Maybe someone in the audience wants to pick it up. So no patents from my side on this idea. Thank you very much, Nicolas. I'm really looking forward to talk to you later in the panel discussion. But for now, I would say that we invite our third guest this morning, and he will talk about a different sports. So from football, we will move to handball. And even though this digital deep dive is hosted by Football Business Insight, I always enjoy when we take a look at different sports. So now we will talk about the potential of live data for the Handball Bundesliga, its clubs, partners, broadcasters, and fans. So we have a stakeholder approach here. And I'm very happy that we can welcome Frank Bohmann, who's already next to me. He's the managing director of the LIQUI-MOLY Handball Bundesliga, and looking forward to your presentation, Frank.
Yes, thank you, Ralf, and good morning from Cologne. And also thank you to Maximilian and Nicolas for their comprehensive insights, very interesting. And I think one or two points of your presentations I will pick up here. I will give you a short presentation of 15 minutes with 3 short clips. And especially for the overseas audience, I have 1 or 2 slides where I introduce Handball Bundesliga. For those people from overseas, handball is football with their hands. Yeah, it's really a brother of football, and we are very close. We are very close in cooperation with Deutsche Fußballliga, and I think there are a lot of similarities. So I think we're not that far away, and I appreciate very much the invitation of Football Business Insight. Thank you for that. I share my presentation. 1 second. Hope this will work out. Yeah. Can you see that? Ralf, can you give me a hint?
I cannot see it now, but I think in the background, Thomas has to click something. I don't know if you've shared it already, but so far I just see you.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thomas says that he doesn't see the presentation for approval. So now I see something. Yeah, now it's loading.
That's
Perfect.
good. That's good.
Yeah, if you go to presentation mode, then we can kick it off, I think.
So here we go.
Can throw it off. That's the better metaphor for you, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So the short overview about our league. Our claim is the strongest league in the world. We have 18 clubs all over Germany. We broadcast our matches in 30 countries. We won really often the European Club Championships, the Champions League 20 times, and the EHF Cup, which from this season is the Euro League. It's something like the Euro League in football, 24 times. We normally have an audience in the venues of 1.5 million people. That is due to the situation right now, of course, different. We have media partners in Germany with Sky and the public TV. And we have 306 matches per season. The organization of Handball Bundesliga is not only for the first league, but also for the second league. These are the people in Germany who are interested in handball. It's nearly 50 million people who are strong, very strong, or a bit interested in Handball, and nearly 17 million people are very strong or strongly interested in that. We are mainly male so far, 65%, and the audience has a generally high income. That's only in a very short manner how handball is settled in Germany. And to give you an idea how we installed the KINEXON technology, I presented a short clip. 1 second. And here we go. So this may give you an impression on there were pictures from our first season with KINEXON. What is the idea behind the technology? And my history with KINEXON is that I sit with our management board in 2015 and thought about key technologies for the future to bring handball to the next level. And really in this process, I met Maximilian the first time in 2015, early 2015, and we had, I guess, one of his first interviews as founder of KINEXON, and he tried to convince me about the advantages. And at that stage, we were not that far, and I think also KINEXON had to do their homework and improve the product. But in 2018, and we made a tender about real-time tracking technologies, where we invite companies who that services on a sensor base and on an optical base to give offers to follow us up the upcoming years with this real-time technology. In this tender, we had different items which we like to have to be fulfilled, and that was the main points in that tender was, do we get the necessary technical excellence, accuracy, precision, and stability? Is the acceptance of the players good enough to wear these wearables? How is the service and the commitment of the company to follow us the upcoming years? And how can they assist us in the implementation and the interface management to other data sources, to content management systems and social media and so on. We also had a big point of how is the user guidance, how easy is that to use, not only for us in the office, but also in the arena. And another point was, of course, pricing. How expensive is this, and how can we manage to develop a business model which fulfills our needs? And after closing this tender, it was a very, very clear decision that KINEXON was our partner for upcoming years. And we started, as far as we know, as the first league worldwide integrating a real-time tracking in every arena, in every venue, and in many training venues as well. And I can show you what we installed before that. And this technology, and that was one of Nicolas' points. Why did we make this investment decision? Not only to have any kind of technology installed, but for us it was the next level of integrating technology in an existing system. Even before we had this technology, we collected data, and we also collected tracking data, but we did that on an analog way. There were co-trainers and scouts who write papers and papers with a pencil. Where did the goal shooter jumps up, and where did he land it? Where was the ball in the goal? What did the goalkeeper, which action did the goalkeeper? And as you can imagine, that is a bundle of work, and it did not have the accuracy like the technology we use now. And that is what we did before. We had basis data collected since 2005 and 6 in a digital way. Doing by scouts, but only results, goals, yellow and red cards, penalties, and visitors. That was followed up by historic data. We also entered that data with analog sheets of papers from 1966, since founding of Handball Bundesliga. And the next step was scouting data, which we did with Sportradar in 2015-16, where we had other actions that we measured also by scouts and by people. And since 1920, when we closed up our tender, we started our live tracking with KINEXON, and that means we not only installed the technology, which I show you now, but we also had service people from KINEXON at every match, making sure that we have no mistakes, no fault measurements. And I can tell you, since we started, and that is more than 1,000 games later, we had only one halftime where we missed the data. And that was due to a human mistake because somebody forgot to load up a battery. But it's a very, very stable system. And since that, we had nearly as non-fault measurements. Of course, we had a learning curve, but the technology was really stable and accepted by staff and by people. Since this season, we have the sensor also in every ball in the league. The 2 years before, we had only one manufacturer who can manage to install it in the ball, but now every match is played with a sensor inside, and it is a perfect quality. So there's no difference in sensitive or in weight or something where a player recognizes it's a ball with or without a sensor. And that is not as simple as it sounds. Besides that, we have the wearables. carried by the players, normally with this bra that you can see here, which is highly accepted. And in the beginning, there were some complaints: is that safe enough? Because handballers often fall on the ground. But so far, we have no doubts about using this technology, and every player is, on the one hand, obliged by our guidance to use that, but it's also highly accepted by every player. Besides that, we have the sensors and the other equipment. You can see that this is the receiver that takes the sensor, who communicates with the sensor of the players, and that is installed at this point in an arena. Yeah? Not that easy. We had 4 months of time, and I can tell you there are some simple proofs that we had to fulfill just to get enough electricians to install that. But also there we got a lot of support by the people of KINEXON. So what is the added value of this? So we don't do that only because we want to have some kind of technology, but we identify a lot of values that is brought by the usage of this technology. It's digital innovation on the one hand, it's better understanding of handball and comparability. We want to raise new revenue potentials, not only by Handball Bundesliga, but also by the clubs. We strengthen the partnership with the sponsors, and we want to support our sportive decision makers because there we are really at the beginning, but in the long run, it will help us to identify talents. It will help us to identify tactics of the own team and of the opponent, and all over we want to lift handball to a new level. And to give you one example how we did that, and I picked up the 4th point, strengthen the partnership with the sponsors. I show you an example that we did with our sponsor DKB, Deutsche Kreditbank, which comes here, who was the main sponsors for many years. And since the beginning of our partnership with KINEXON, it is our technology partner, and I show you the benefits that we earn from this partnership, and we did it in a special way with a Handball Performance Index. I show you a short video which gives you the idea. It's unfortunately for the international viewers in German, but I give you a short summary afterwards. So I again have to... So that is gone. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. I'm sorry for that. The video is for any reason not available right now. It's on YouTube, but I can't show it. The main idea of Handball Performance Index is that we collect the data and have for every player a position-specific index that we created. And for creating this index, we had a lot of experts who did the building up of this performance index. That was players, that was the national trainers of the Handball Bundesliga, also fans, scientists, the people of KINEXON, and our own staff, where we integrated all this data to have an idea how good the performance of a player is. So, and now maybe you have to I have another short clip where I need some assistance. 1 second, please. Ich brauche jetzt das dritte Video. So that is how the Handball Performance Index is working.
Frank, sorry to interrupt. Can you pause the video for a second, please? Frank? Can you hear me? If you're listening, I think we have problems following the video. We can just hear it. Frank, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't see the video. We just heard it.
No, that's bad.
But the sound was good, though. No worries.
Also, Selina, muss mal kommen, bitte.
Es ist das Herausfordern.
Yeah, we would just give them 1 or 2 moments to work on their technical difficulties. And I think that's something. The funny thing, though, is that I did a lot of live conferences as well, and always as it comes to videos, there are some problems. And in the digital world, is the same as well. Unfortunately, we don't have any technical support there right now to support them, but I'm pretty sure that they will be back on stage as soon as they figured it out. 1 or 2 hints on the usage of the Q&A format. I know that some of you use the Q&A function to submit questions. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky for us to work with those. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section where the action is going. And Nicolas is on stage because he's able to answer 1 or 2 of those questions. I don't know exactly which questions you meant, but I'm sure you meant, but I'm sure you're well prepared. And no, I have some questions as well, if those are done.
If I can answer one question, I think was Nasim, if I say it correctly in the comments I read, because you had a very interesting question around, aren't you putting the coach on the spot if you share all of the data that's live? So for me, I do understand where you're coming from with that comment, but at the end, we're talking public accountability, and we're not sharing secrets per se. So I want to be very clear: if we're here and we're sharing personal data, then it's with the consent of the players. So that's something. If we start talking about heart rate or even accelerometry data or something like that, then for me it's important that we get the consent. But on the other hand, is the technology is there to understand this data. I mean, I've seen apps these days that can measure heart rate just through a video camera. So I would be able today to get Ralf's heart rate just because he's looking at a camera that can measure it. So you will get the data one way or another, and I think that's the point where you'd rather share official data and you'd rather have it in a way, and therefore public accountability is based on facts. And I think that's why, rather than making it a magic source, I think it's a positive thing that you actually increase this public accountability and don't see it as something negative. But I thought I'd pick that one up quickly because I felt it was a very good question.
Yeah, thank you very much, and not just for the question, but for the answer as well, Nicolas. And since you know, since you said you know my heart rate, just you can give a guess. I have the exact answer here on my wrist. It's 59, if you're interested. So thank you very much, Nicolas, and for the question. I get the message then that Frank is back. Of course, we will discuss the further questions which are posted in the comments or in the chat function later. Frank, how is it going? Can we share now?
I'm really sorry for that difficulties.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. So I think I can show again the video, but the idea is that we, based on the collected data, we made an index where we measure the performance of every player. And regarding that, we also share that with our media partners. We share that with our fans. With regard to that index that we have the best player on every position in the league, and we selected according to that the team of the season. And from the team of the season, we let the fans elect the player of the season. And that is all based on the data that we collect. That is only one, not simple, but a very good example how you can use this data to raise the fan engagement, to have more values for the media partners, and also satisfying digital solutions for our sponsoring partners, which are for Handball really important because they have a big share in financing our budgets. And also what we will do from next season on basis of this technology, we will install a fantasy manager game where we also want to reach a younger target group and have other possibilities to raise fan engagement. Good. I think my time is over. Sorry again for the complications, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, Ralf.
Thank you very much, Frank. Again, we imagine standing ovations, and do not worry about the technical difficulties. To be honest, I already had the feeling because 1 out of 3 typically has technical difficulties, and since we didn't have any with Maximilian and Nicolas, it is the unlucky third person. So do not worry about that.
I have more digital natives than I am.
As I said, please do not worry about that. Before we invite the others again on stage, I have one question. You mentioned the acceptance of the players for the technical hardware. And my question here is, was this a big discussion within your league, within your Handball Bundesliga, that some players or maybe even some clubs did not accept the technical innovation for the equipment of live tracking?
We were a bit afraid about that, because data and the security of data is a big thing, at least in Germany. But we had a lot of discussions and video discussions, and also were at the people in their training arenas and ask for the acceptance and the chances for the sport when we use this kind of technology. And so far, we have no complaints about that. I don't know how that will develop in the upcoming years. We heard that in other sports, in other leagues, there are big complaints about that and about revenues which should be shared with the carriers of the data, but so far we have this problem not in Handball.
Okay, I keep my fingers crossed, as we say, and hope that this will stay the same. And thank you very much again, Frank. I would now like to welcome Maximilian and Nicolas back on stage so that we can have our final panel discussion. In the original agenda, this was timed until 11:30, but we have some buffer afterwards, so we don't have to hurry in any way. And as I said, you are more than welcome to post your questions in the chat function, in the comment function. I don't know how it is called on your side because we have the host view here. But please use the chat where Nassim and Axel sent the last messages. And luckily, we already received some questions, and I will always prioritize the questions of the audience higher than my questions. And since Maximilian had the biggest break after his presentation up until now, I would like to start with you because Kilian asked if you will offer the possibility for guest teams to get the data as well if the host team stadium supports KINEXON.
That's a very good question, and it's handled case by case. I think we also got an answer in our community already how it's handled in Norway. If you have a league-wide solution like Frank has with the German Handball League, I think they handle how to distribute the data across the home team and also the away team already like on a central base. If an individual team decides to bring in a solution like KINEXON in their arena and track their performance in home games, we often have in our contracts that we have the opportunity to also equip the guest team, but it's only working with the consent of the home team that we're using their arena to track also the host team. But normally it's about communication and things can be handled. So it's very often very simple that the away team just asks for it and we then facilitate the communication. And in the majority of the case, it's not a big deal. Okay. So technological wise, it's easy. It's more like a matter if you're allowed to and if anyone has a problem with that, but normally not.
Of course, now it would be interesting which clubs do not support the guest teams, but we will not discuss this here. So thank you very much. Maximilian, you mentioned Frank, and this is indeed a very interesting question because Frank, you decided to do a league approach. Were there any complaints by clubs who, for example, had their own ideas for technical equipment and you as a league said you now use this system, or were they obedient as they should be?
No, there were big discussions. On the one hand, as Maximilian said, how do we share the players' data with the home and the away team? In the first 2 years, we decided that only the home teams get their own data and the away teams get their own data. From this season, we took the decision with the agree of all clubs that also the away team data is shared with the home team and the other way around. So we have, with the trainers on the sporting perspective, we have a lot of competition in interface management. They all have their own analysis systems, and it needs to be connected to that. And that, if you look in the future, I would appreciate a consultant who says the linkage of data from different sources is no problem at all. That is something that we really deal with. And if we want to have the next step, we have to find solutions for integrating all these data sources to one big data cube. And that would bring us really forward.
Sounds like a big challenge. Thank you very much. And we have a question from Juan. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you very much for the question, which goes into your direction, Frank, as well. He's asking, do you think any other handball league is any closer to offering the same technologies as the Bundesliga does? I think you already said that you have a very ambitious vision, but precisely to answer the question from Juan, what is your opinion on that, Frank?
Yeah, I'm not aware of another league who is doing that, but the big championships, the current European championships in Slovakia and Hungary, they also use the technology. And Maximilian, I'm not sure if you only are in link with the IHF, the World Handball Federation. I think they are at least open for that. But as a league with a permanent playing schedule, you have many other opportunities to interact with fans, with media all over the year. And it's also for them, especially for the media partners, a big investment if you want to use that on a professional way. And there we have more chances than in 2 weeks event like the European Championships right now. But now we sit in the driver's seat, and I hope that other leagues will follow, because for handball, it's really, really a big thing. And I think it's on every field, on every item that we want to get further ahead, fan engagement, media, sporting perspective, I think we have really good opportunities to get a better development.
Yeah. And Frank, since you just mentioned international tournaments, I have a question from Konrad, which goes in the direction of Nicolas. Konrad is asking if the FIFA does have concrete plans for a KINEXON rollout at the tournaments, or is the interest more opportunistic at the moment?
Many layers to that question. So I think a lot of what's just been said is true here. Is that first of all, the choice of wearables is something that's team specific at the moment. So we're not a league like Frank just mentioned. And while you do have big tournaments like ourselves where it could be rolled out, the acceptance is not, well, the acceptance with players depends to start with. So a lot of them are wearing GPS or local positioning systems. But to get all the teams, so let's take a World Cup, to get 32 teams to agree to one specific technology, when you potentially have long-term commitments and agreements with competitors, with other valid tracking providers, is going to be relatively difficult. So I'd say that the vision, and this is more probably 4 to 8 years from now, would be to have a more agnostic infrastructure in place that's capable of ingesting data from all sorts of different devices, not only a KINEXON, and as was mentioned, but to actually make sort of the data collection more of a commodity. The reason we're looking at this now is that we want to understand the potential as much as everyone else, and that's why we're having all these conversations. What can we do with the live data? What meaning does it have? We're looking at it for officiating purposes. As said, we need to see how can we help our referees with that. The same holds true as I was just answering in my previous intermezzo before around public accountability. The referee has to justify why he did certain things and not other ones. So for me, it's really trying to work with companies that are future oriented. That's why we chose this specific partnership with KINEXON, but that's not exclusive. So we're more than happy to get to on board 3, 4, 5 other companies that want to go in the direction, that want to develop it. So it's not that it's opportunistic, but I really think that we need to look at these avenues, and we need to understand how we can use the potential of this data to improve. So we can see that all the big leagues, and this is really down to our tournaments, we use optical tracking. I saw the comment as well in the chat about Norway as well. We know they all use optical tracking, but it's about really how you can enhance that now, knowing that you can get data. One last comment, and that's probably on the why we do it this way. Max mentioned the NBA before. Well, they're indoors, so GPS didn't work. Handball, very similar. So I think they looked at this local positioning system, so the LPS technology first. Had football needed to go down that route of not being able to use GPS as much because you train outside, then we might be in a very different place. But I believe because typically football has started with global positioning system or the GNSS systems, this leap to LPS is now a shift, not only in philosophy, but also in trying to convince of the additional benefits. And I think that's just also one of the harder things, but that's why we're trying to explore how we can use it. And the last point, to actually answer the question, we want to make as much technology available to the teams that want to use it. And I think we need to find a way around that. So that's really the space that we're trying to work in, without really answering too concretely.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nicolas. I think we have two different approaches. On the one hand side, we have the handball central approach, and then we have the FIFA more decentralized approach. Nicolas, are you sometimes a little bit jealous because of the centralized approach that Frank can do in his handball context?
Look, jealous is the wrong word. I think Frank and similar contacts within basketball, I say your job is easy. Yeah, you just need to deal with one provider. I need to deal with like 35. Of course, that's slightly joking on that half. No, I think it's a different approach. So for me, Frank has explained it very well. There's a logic within the league, but that requires a lot of commitment, which is also why you don't see it in so many other leagues yet. Yeah, you need a plan, you need funding, you need to actually do this integration, and you need people who take responsibility on the day to implement this. So for me, football is much bigger in the sense with the democratic aspect, that it goes all the way down. So to try and bring a technology like that into a game of the size of football is always going to be a lot harder. So for me, it's really using the potential that we can get of data, but across as broad a spectrum as we can. So look, we have completely different challenges. It's about how do we get an under 12 team? How can we utilize technology? Something I haven't brought up here is what we're calling broadcast tracking. How do we extract data from the video footage? How can we use that at the lowest level? So I think in that sense, we have a very different challenge. And look, while at the elite level, it's fantastic to see when you go watch potentially basketball, ice hockey, handball, these games, to see the opportunities that are there. I think they equally look at football and would love to have the global reach. So I think there's very different challenges. So. Yeah. So no, not particularly jealous.
But nevertheless, different approaches, different challenges, but we all agree that live data have a huge potential. And regarding this potential, I would like to talk a little bit more about the commercialization, the monetization of those live data that we have during the game. And I already have two questions from the audience, one from Thomas and one from Ador on this, but nevertheless, a more broader question. Maximilian, when you sit together with, as you called them, I don't know if you decided the leaders, but the future thoughters, you said that, of course, sometimes you have to convince them and you discuss it with them. Which are the arguments on a more commercial side rather than on just optimizing the sports side on the pitch? What are the arguments on the commercial side that you typically make them win the argument?
I think that there's a indirect and a direct approach towards that. So a direct approach is utilizing the data to enable new ways of sponsorship. You have a dedicated sponsor for the tracking data, the performance insights, like Frank has with the DKB, which is a great partnership that exploits the possibilities in a very broad way, from digital to on-site venue activation. So that's a direct approach, that you take the opportunity activated by a sponsor, or how you can monetize it by getting back from the fans. For example, you want to have like a fantasy gaming model. It can be a freemium or a premium model, and the fans directly kind of contribute to that by paying like for premium account for getting more access to the data, to get them like an advantage in the gaming aspect, or from betting providers would like to use the data in that matter. That's the direct approach, how you can generate new revenue streams for a league. And the indirect is just enhancing the quality of the product, because we all are facing like a changing way of how we consume sports from audiences. So I like to go to the arena and just watch 90 minutes of football or 60 minutes of handball. That's the way how I work and I grew up. But I know a lot of people who don't have the patience to do that, who like to do it a bit more interactive and consume like highlights. They want to talk and chat with their friends and communicate, and they need a more interactive way of consuming live sports. And having the data at hand enables you to enhance the quality of the product by enabling applications to make the viewing experience for the younger audience that have that more interactive need and demand for watching sports accessible to them. And that will just trigger more fans to your sports. And a bigger viewership in the long run will enable you bigger commercial exploitation by getting bigger media deals, getting bigger sponsors. And it's more like an indirect approach where you have like a long-term vision about how you can enhance the quality of the product and sports that you're promoting.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for this overview. More precisely asked, as Thomas did, thank you very much, by the way, for that, Thomas. He's asking, in your knowledge, are there any leagues who have a league tracking system in place that also commercialize on their tracking data live as official data? You just mentioned that Frank and the DKB have a very good sponsorship agreement and leverage these live data. We will talk about that in a minute. But beyond that, are there any other leagues who commercialize their live data, for example, for betting providers or something else?
Absolutely. I think Frank also uses the data with the HBL for broadcasting. So Sky is integrating the tracking data in the live broadcast feed, for example. The German Bundesliga is using tracking data to commercialize their AWS partnership in the broadcasting. The NFL is using tracking data live in the broadcast to interact with younger audience. And so yes, there are a couple of leagues doing that already.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Frank, as I already said, I would like to go a little bit deeper into your usage of the live data as well. And the first question, since Maximilian just mentioned it, is regarding the partnership with DKB, Deutsche Kreditbank. How do you use live tracking in this sponsorship agreement? If you can go into detail on this.
DKB is something like the main sponsor of this product, and as you know, it's a direct bank, and their business models, their business processes are all digital, and their approach in sponsoring is, of course, to have all the advantages of an emotional sports, but on the other hand, to transport their excellence in digital processes. And this is what we do with this product excellently. And that is, of course, a good sponsorship. And this is how the development of sponsorship will follow up the upcoming years. And not only big spenders as DKB, but also small spenders say, hey, I want to have a digital product. Give me solutions and not ask questions. And I don't want to have a simple banner or something. Give me content, give me digital excellence, and give me emotions. And that is the mix, which is of big interest nearly by every sponsor. And as Maximilian says, we enrich our media product, and we are this year in the tender to give our media rights from the season 23-24, and it will be a fundamental basis that we offer to the market. And I'm quite sure that this is honored by the networks, by the askers of these media rights. I think that is not a direct business approach, but we will enrich the media product and also hope to raise our license monies. And third thing is that we, of course, want to develop new businesses with that, also within the media. So if we are able to give new users, new fans, the possibility to get from us individual contents, one-to-one contents of their favorite players, that is what we want to reach within the next years. And there's a lot of work to do, a lot of interface management to bring all that data together. But if we are able to do that, I think we are really settled for the future market and the change in media habits.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. Another question from Adwar in the same direction. There are, of course, some very figure-driven decision takers in sports organizations, and they might ask, okay, but which KPIs will improve after, for example, implementing KINEXON's data? Is it then, for example, the viewing rate on Sky? Is it the attendance to home games? Or how do you try to measure the success of the newly implemented technology, Frank? Do you have any insights on that for us?
What we have is a business plan only for this project. Yeah, and you can imagine that is bad in getting a new deal with Maximilian, but the license fee is only a quite small part of the cost that we have. Yeah, the installation and the workforce to get this service done is a lot of more than the license fee, but it's a few million euro investment per season. But on the other hand, we try to earn that back. Yeah, and the points that we have to besides the cost, the revenues on the other side, they changed even in the 3 years that we did so far. So we have revenues not only with sponsoring, but we have also revenues in digital advertisement when we put that to our social media channels, and we are more than happy with this plan because we were able to manage to fulfill a positive result within 2 years. So it's a good investment and a good example for a digital project. We did others which were much more expensive in the long run.
I'm very curious about those too, but let's stay focused on the live data topic which we have here. And we have a very good question on the investment side from my point of view from Minea. Thank you very much for that question. This goes in the direction of democratization of the live data and especially the technology behind it. Because on the one hand side, I just heard that it has a very good amortization. So if I invest, I get money back through sponsorships or the other points that Frank mentioned. But on the other hand side, we have to invest a significant amount of money in order to be able to do that. So question for all three of you, is this product or the solution we are talking about just something for the very top tier clubs, which then could neglect lower tier clubs or even lower tier sports? So besides handball and football, for example, or is there a possibility for those smaller organizations to leverage the potential of live data too? It's an explicit question for all three of you. So whoever wants to start, just give me a sign. I just saw Maximilian nodding.
Yeah, I think it's the most important question for, if you look at the whole community of the sport, right? It's like our technology that we have implemented at Handball Bundesliga with Frank's team has a specific scope, and you need to scale that down for different leagues. So if you want to offer the same kind to a smaller league, you have to adopt a bit like the cost structure of that. So you need to have some kind of flexibility to make it scalable and use maybe different technologies for different sizes of markets, but ultimately maybe even thinking about different kind of business models. Every market is different. Some markets really benefit a lot from the licensing that they get for the media and video rights. Some others are living more from a sponsorship perspective. Some can commercialize more directly from the fans or from the sponsors from big teams. So I think we have to, as a provider, we always go to a specific league or federation and look at the specific circumstances that we find there to ideally adopt the services that we bring in and find then the right business model for that. That is our approach to that. But if I were a league, and I think Frank or Nicolas can answer that better for federation, I think it's also, first of all, you should think about what do you need, what do you want, and then find what might be the right technology that can fulfill that need and requirement, and then work on a business model, how that can look like. And there are multiple ways of doing that. Some also could be, for example, a joint investment by the league and the vendor, and then having like a revenue share model and split like the risk, for example. That is also like a common approach by some in the market.
Okay, so you do not neglect certain sports or certain businesses because they are too small right now.
for the time being, there always can be the case that a league approaches us and we don't find like a solution for the budget.
Yeah.
This can always be the case. We cannot, unfortunately, we cannot offer it for all the different sports and all the different markets at the same time. We have to focus somehow on part of it, and we have to expand over time. And we try to get more scalable across to smaller leagues over time as the technology also matures, and over maturity becomes normally like decreasing prices. But and unfortunately for the leagues out there are more providers than just KINEXON. So I think that we also advise them, if we find out together that we are not the perfect fit, we also would advise them to find partners that we know that can do similar stuff that we can do.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Maximilian. So this is basically the service provider point of view. I would like now to change the point of view, maybe to Nicolas, to the federation perspective. With FIFA, within FIFA, you have 211 members, all of a different size. So do you want to offer the things we talked about to all of them, or just to the top 10, top 20, because they are big enough to actually invest the amount of money necessary?
Well, I hope we all know the answer to that question. No, I think it's the idea is to get it as broadly as possible, and that comes back to my whole why FIFA is getting involved. It's not to help Germany try and win the next World Cup. Let's see. Let's see if they can attempt. But it's precisely to try and help develop and improve. And I think Maximilian's touched on a lot of points. For us, the reason we did the testing and the validation of the systems is so that we can show what are good systems, what are even okay systems. And that depends then on what do I need. We started with the very first introduction around we all have individual wearables. I have my running watch. I won't show the brand, but it's one of those where I decide for myself, do I want to spend €1,000 on it, or am I fine with a €50 tracker, depending on what I want to do? And I think we need to apply the same logic here. The second element to answer your question is I don't want to force technology on someone who doesn't want it. So I also think we want to try and make things available for those who do it. Using the nice analogy Frank had before around the scouts that sit there with their pen and pencil and draw when a player is throwing or what the position was. If you're doing that again today, then there are means and there's relatively low cost technology to improve on that, right? So even just a video recording with a very basic layer of AI to do to even just to tag. I mean, a lot of you will know sports code, will know these tools. And this is available at a relatively low cost. The one point that I would make from a federation perspective, and I mean, we have the full spectrum from a FIFA World Cup or Women's World Cup, which is the highest level of tournament you will find in football, down to youth tournaments. Yeah, we also do under 17 World Cups. So it's a different service level. You don't necessarily have, but the essence of having data is the same. Right, you want tracking data, you want event data across these, but it ultimately comes down to what are the teams asking for? How do they want it delivered? But the format ultimately stays the same. So I think it's really it has to be the objective here that we try and democratize, that we look at the top end, and that we try and see how can we scale it down that people still get the solution they want. And I mean, just KINEXON, like other providers, like Catapult, like StatSports, to throw the names in here to be very clear, they offer, local positioning systems are more expensive than GPS systems. You have low-cost GPS systems. Same with optical tracking. The state of the art today is 10, 12 camera systems. That's expensive. So we're not anymore at this one camera tracking system as we've mentioned. So therefore, I think it's definitely something that you want to make available to as broadly as possible, but there has to be a demand. And my last point in that, and I think Frank, you can use that as a segue then as well. The bigger the league, and you mentioned it earlier about you only missed one half of a game one data from one half. It's a question of accountability, responsibility. Of course, if you outsource that to a service provider, that's when it becomes expensive. If you have the internal resources, if you have the staff inside your league, inside your organization to run it yourself, then of course it becomes a lot cheaper if all you're buying is hardware and a license, if you can do the operations yourself. But that also brings up the question of accountability. if Frank were to say, right, Max, I don't want your service anymore, then he becomes responsible the moment that that doesn't work anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest differences you'll see between the elite and the amateur level, is that if you do it yourself and it goes wrong, you have no one else to blame. Whereas if you're at the elite level, you ultimately you want someone to be accountable for this, and therefore you will find that. So I think the cost of operations is something that will make a big difference here.
Yeah.
Frank.
So again, it should be available to all who want the solutions, but on a different level. So it's not one size fits all, surprisingly. But thank you very much for elaborating on that, Nicolas. Frank, how do you think about the democratization of the live data technology?
So when we took this decision 3 years ago to invest in this technology, we also considered to invest also for our second league, which is a professional league, one of the 5 biggest league in the world with respect to the turnaround, but decided that at this stage they had other investments to settle before, because you need an infrastructure, you need venues, you need that people that Nicolas says, which have to do the operations. And at that time, the second league was not ready for that. And when we had the discussions there, I asked Maximilian, is there any low budget possibility that we could install in the second league? But it wasn't. So you can't say, I make that half, or I make only a few games. Yeah, if you do that, you have nearly the same amount of costs. But we will rethink that. We have a 4 years contract with KINEXON, and after that period, we will prove that very carefully if this investment could also be a good investment for our second league. I can't tell you so far, but we are much closer than 3 years before, because we have the experience of fails and of good things, and we don't make that fails again. And I think it's also a chance for smaller businesses, and the technology will further develop. Maybe there's also a cutting of costs. I can't tell you right now, but maybe it's in the long run more expensive not to invest, because you stay in your old structures, in your old sponsorships, and the market is asking for new trends, for digital solutions, and this is due for every league, if they are small, if they are big.
I really like the quote. In the end, it might be even more expensive to not invest. So this would be a coin in the Phrasenschwein if we had one. But I totally agree, and I think so do Nicolas and Maximilian. I have 2 topics left for the end of our panel discussion, and thank you very much so far. And both topics are started by questions from the audience. The first one is from Bernd, and it goes in the direction of fan engagement. So we now learned that many clubs and organizations and even federations are gathering a lot of data, most of them, or some of them even live. And the question is, how do we bring this closer to the fans? So how can the fans be better able to understand and analyze what those KPIs mean? Maybe in an entertaining way, maybe in an informative way. So what are your points on that? And Bernd mentions in this context NFTs for fan engagement, but I think this is a totally separate topic, but nevertheless, it's up to you to answer this question. And Maximilian is smiling the brightest, if I can see it. So if you again would like to start.
I don't know why I'm really smiling, because I think it's one of the topics that makes us the most headaches. How we can make it really great for the fans. 3 things that we learned over the last couple of years are, it's core to have an editorial concept as a league. So I think it's really important to understand what kind of stories you want to tell the data, and you really have to have a good understanding about the sports itself. And what Frank and the HBL does with the player performance index is they integrated the stakeholders in the development of that index. So there are like representatives of fans, handball experts who have an understanding about what is interesting for the fans, right? Because we cannot tell. I cannot claim that I'm like the biggest handball fan in the world and I'm the biggest expert, but we should ask the fans themselves and integrate them into that collaborative process. And so coming up with an editorial concept, what might be relevant for a sport, is the beginning for every league to make sure that there is engagement. Then education, we really have to have those videos to educate what the data is telling us and give examples of best in class and make references compared to other sports, compared to average human performances, to really get them an understanding about it. It took the NFL, they have like a quarterback index. It took them like 20, 30 years to get this established in the minds of the fans. So it's an educational process, and all the stakeholders need to involve it. The commentators need to reference it in the way of their storytelling. And finally, context, right? Only if I have context and know if that is the hardest throw in the history of handball or the hardest throw of this particular person or that game, I can have a sense of whether this 145 kilometers per hour are a really fast throw or not. So having that context is essential, and checking those boxes is essential to have success. Not talking about the different channels that will do it, like NFTs or gamification or betting. I think in general, it's more like the concept, how you approach it and integrate it, that is so essential. And we had to go through a lot of learnings throughout the last years to get that going, because it's not about the KPIs, it's more about the new stories that we can tell about the sport.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maximilian, for that. I saw that Nicolas unmuted himself, so ready to answer the question as well. What do you think? How can we bring the data closer to the fans, or do we even have to?
Yeah, I mean, I'd concur with what's been said. I have sort of two approaches to it. The one is, I don't think the fans are particularly good at telling us what they want, and I don't mean that badly, but I think it is just also very difficult to ask someone, what do you want from a technology that you might not understand? And let's all be fair that we all don't fully understand yet. So I feel, if I can use that image, we're going down a river that's coming to the delta, and at the end of the river, it goes into lots of little streams in all sorts of directions. And I feel that that's something that we haven't necessarily got a grasp over. The big question around why don't we commercialize this data more is, well, no one's paying for it. So the moment that I understood what are you willing to pay for, then of course everyone will start building the infrastructure. So I think that's the one side where, we're talking about social media, all of these things. No one's yet managed to commercialize it in a way, because if someone had, everyone would be doing it. For me, there's around the data itself is, yes, you need to take the fan on the journey. I think if you give him more quality insights, even if it's for the pub talk at the end, rather than saying, oh, he had a terrible game, he should have scored that goal. If you can actually maybe do some insights based on some more data, like why we shouldn't have lost the game, we had these and these metrics. Now, I think it just adds to the quality of the conversation. I think you can read the game better in real time with live data. You mentioned the commentator, but it's also maybe understanding why is a certain team doing something at a certain time. I always use the example, a 0-0 doesn't have to be a boring game. Now I'm a football nut, but you can have really exciting tactical stalemates, and understanding what a team is doing to create that can be really, really insightful. But for me, the core point in all of this, and they're not so much about new KPIs or not KPIs, and it kind of goes a bit back to the conversation earlier. I think the media rights will lose value if you don't enhance them with data over in the future. And so maybe you don't have a direct return on investment, and I think this was said before, but if you just provide 20 camera angles of video without anything added to it, I think that will become an issue. We're already seeing it, if I can use a different example, with I follow German football as well. So if you look at the German Cup, and it's like, oh, well, if we'd had the video referee, this goal wouldn't have been allowed. So we know, we have a fact and said, well, we can see it was offside, but because we're not using technology, the goal stands. So there's an error. And the same will come if you don't have data. If you say, oh, well, it would have been great to know how fast that ball was thrown or how hard that ball was shot or what the tactical setup is, but we don't have data, so we don't know. People will then start asking for it. And so I think it's a slow evolutionary process, but my most comprehensive answer would be what I said first, is really this idea, let's make the discussion amongst fans more informed. And I do think fans want that. And I'm sure it's the same for handball.
Yeah, let's see if it's the same for handball as well. Thank you very much, Nicolas. Frank, closing the round on the topic of fan engagement. How do you use, or how do you can imagine that the data will be used in the future?
I think we are still really at the beginning of this process. I underline all points that Nicolas mentioned. Maybe one additional is that we need to be able to individualize the content for the single user, for the single fan, that we give only the content of a favorite player, of a favorite team, and bring that to that device. And what that need is, as I said before, interface management between the different data sources that we have. And that is quite some work to do, but if we are able to do that, and that is what Netflix is doing, what Amazon is doing, individualize their product to the needs of the customer. And this is something where we are really at the beginning, but it will be, to the change of habits in media use, one of the crucial points in the future. And there will be real-time tracking. They will have a big stake in that. And we are not that far so far, also not so far in the use for sporting reasons, to identify the best talents, to identify deficits of a player. These are all the points where we have to spend a lot of energy, a lot of brain to use this technology, and maybe also for NFTs, which is hot stuff right now. We so far did not identify that as a big business model for us.
Yeah, maybe a topic for a different digital deep dive by Football Business Insight. Maybe just an idea. And I said that I have a last closing question from Minea audits, at least inspired by Minea, since I have to look at the time for a little bit. That's why I would like to you to answer in 1 or 2 sentences maximum. Let's try if we can do that. And Minea is asking for the topics which might be the next big opportunities. So the question basically is, if you now, for example, are a venture capitalist and could invest into one technology, into one use case in the field of using live data, which would you use? As I said, I would look forward to a crisp answer, and that's why I not name anyone to start. So whoever feels comfortable to start, feel free to start.
Yeah, I'll mention it. For me, it's just in-depth insights. Sorry, Frank. Just in-depth insights, better understanding of the game, better understanding for a coach of tactical thing, and ultimately smoothing processes and actually letting the people that you've hired do the work of analyzing and using their cognitive intelligence and really taking advantage of that artificial intelligence. For me, that's key.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicolas. Frank, I hope Nicolas left some points for you as well.
I can't tell you the magic technology, but I think real-time tracking will be a part of the key technologies in the next 10 years. And to the point of investors, I get many investors who ask me about our experiences that we did the last 2.5 years. So I guess there will be some money getting into this sector and into this technology. And money follows business models.
Yeah, I think some news that Maximilian really likes. Maximilian, where would you invest, or where maybe are you actually investing?
100% in KINEXON. So I put all my money on KINEXON, and but to say what kind of field we are looking into, I would agree with Nicolas' comment. I think the next big thing will be making sense out of the real-time data into more meaningful insights, sport-specific insights, and making easy to consume for the fans. I think that will be a big topic where we focus on our investments.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. There are so many more questions from the audience, and I have some questions as well, but maybe we can postpone it to a different time, to a different place, maybe even in person. But nevertheless, I think we leverage the virtual opportunities that we have quite good. So thank you very much to the three of you. Again, now you would receive standing ovations from all the participants in the audience. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure that they learned a lot as well. I just assume that if there are follow-up questions, the people in the audience are allowed to contact you, for example, via LinkedIn. And there's one open topic regarding the presentations. You ask for them. We will discuss it with our experts if and how we can share it, and we'll get back to you on that. But if you maybe want to rewatch or rehear something, just have a look on the website of Football Business Insight. There you will find the recordings. There you will find even the magazine with which Football Business Insight started. You can download the newest issue for free. And of course, if there might be new digital deep dives, you will find the announcements there as well. And don't forget, if you are in the stadium or sitting on the sofa next time watching a game, if it's football or handball or any other sports, be aware of the live data that is presented to you. And you can do our organizations a huge favor if you communicate what you want out of this data. As Nicolas said, he's nodding. And by saying that, I would like to close this digital deep dive, discovering the potential of live data in sports. Many thanks to Football Business Insight for hosting this, and many thanks for Frank, Nicolas, and Maximilian for filling it with your expertise. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right.
Bye.